It's great seeing everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having us, to the Hot Springs folks. It's just a really special conference. I think you've all noticed that. Just a quick intro on my end before I introduce this amazing panel here. My name's Adam Dylewski. I do a lot of digital strategy on the PBS programming team. My background is, before I was in this role, I was director of programming with PBS Digital Studios and spent most of my career creating educational content for YouTube, for online audiences, podcasts, social. And so spending about 15 years creating stuff for YouTube probably melted my brain a little bit, but it is what it is. I also, these days, I'm the executive producer and editorial lead on a lot of multi-platform projects, including the recently released Weathered Earth's Extremes, which is a series on weather and climate change released on PBS stations, the PBS app, YouTube, and social platforms. So I've been really fortunate to work with a number of folks on this panel. This group represents a really exciting range of projects across different platforms, from short films geared towards film fests and online audiences, to hit YouTube shows, to stations creating series by and for their unique communities, as well as long-form doc producers creating companion content to further the reach of their films across different platforms. Before we begin, we want to kind of establish what multi-platform projects are. We want to sort of define terms. So at PBS, we often consider multi-platform projects things that have one foot in long form, that are being released on television and digital platforms. But it also could be a digital-first series that is reaching audiences across platforms. For example, something that is released on YouTube and a podcast and on social. That's totally multi-platform. So it's really any project that's designed to reach audiences across two or more platforms. So just a quick show of hands. How many of you in the audience released projects on YouTube? A lot of hands, that's great. How many folks have released their projects for film festivals? Well, a lot of hands. How many folks have released projects that have hit television? Very good. How about streaming platforms like the PBS app? A few hands, very good. And how about social media, TikTok, Instagram, etc.? Bunch of hands. So how many folks raised your hands 2 times? So all of you are successful multi-platform producers. Good job, you're in the right place. With that, I want to give each panelist the opportunity to introduce themselves, as well as share 1 to 2 multi-platform projects they're involved in. And each of them are going to show a great clip and talk a little bit more about that. And I think we're going to start with Nicole.
Hi, hello everyone. Thanks for having me, Adam. And I'm really happy to be here with all of you. Jazzed to be celebrating 10 years of Real South, which I get to work on sometimes with Nick Price. And also to be here today to talk about a project I work on with PBS Digital Studios. It's called Overview. And it is a digital-first, YouTube published series. The premise is there are certain stories or questions about the natural Earth that can only be told from above. So we utilize a lot of drone footage and a lot of cinema cam footage to tell sort of stories of natural phenomena. And the clip that I want to share with you is a vertical short. So it's a 1-minute story that is not related to any episode content that we create for the series. The shorts have their own strategy that is just 60 seconds. And the way that it's companion content, thank you, specific, you were like telepathic.
Use the word.
Companion content created to go along with the series, but not directly related to any episode. And so this particular clip I picked because it was a really runaway success very quickly. Over the course of 2 days, it gathered over 1.5 million views and 2,000 comments. And I just think it's a great case study for why and when something might go viral. Okay.
Check this out. From space, it looks like something futuristic etched into the desert, but it's actually a cool kind of solar energy plant, the first of its kind in the US. In the desert outside Las Vegas, over 10,000 computer-controlled mirrors reflect and concentrate sunlight onto that giant central tower, heating pipes of molten salt to over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The hot salt then flows into storage tanks where it's used to create steam and generate electricity. That means this kind of solar power can keep generating electricity after the sun goes down, which is one weakness of traditional solar panels. Now, this particular facility has had its share of problems, but this molten salt method is being used in solar energy farms in places like China, Israel, Morocco, and the UAE. It's pretty cool that the future of energy looks like science fiction, but it's real right now.
Very cool. I just love what sort of it means to be do documentary style storytelling, but mix it with like YouTube social or social sort of formats like that. So excited to talk more about that later on the panel. But let's hand it off to Linda next.
Hi, I'm Linda Midget. I'm the executive producer of content development at Louisiana Public Broadcasting. We're the statewide affiliate for Louisiana. And I oversee the development and production of all of our original content. And I was on this panel last year, so I appreciate being invited back for a second time. I was on it with Adam, actually. And because I like this topic and I'm excited about some of the projects that we're doing in this space. So last year I talked about a French language series that we do called La Vie, if any of you happen to be here in the audience then. But this year I wanted to talk about a series we do called Behind the Glory. And I'm going to walk you through sort of the origins of this and the different ways that the content's being used. LPB for traditionally, we're about to have our 50th anniversary, has never done any sports programming. And many PBS affiliates are very accomplished in that space. Some have their own sports divisions. And then people are in various stages of figuring that out. So for us, this is a really important area that we are trying to move into, but we're trying to figure out how to do it with our limited resources and not, we can't just snap our fingers and come up with a sports division. So a couple of years ago, one of my producers who I've hired in the past couple of years came and said with his freelance work, he had done work for years with the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. And so this is a statewide induction that they have every year. They induct normally 12 people. 8 of them are big name athletes. And then they also recognize journalists and sort of sports ambassadors in the state. So there are, pretty exciting people whose names come out of this. Louisiana is a big sports state. So the ceremony had lost their statewide broadcast distribution. We were not willing to air it for them live because it's a 3.5-hour ceremony, and 3.5 hours of anything is generally too much, especially when it comes to television. But we entered into a partnership with them where we sort of co-shared the production. We stream the ceremony on our YouTube channel, and then we record it. And we cut it down into a 2-hour broadcast special that usually airs 3 to 4 weeks after the actual ceremony. So it first comes as a streaming event on our YouTube channel. Then it has a broadcast shorter footprint. And during the production of it, we take advantage of having all of these athletes there. We sit them down while they're there for the ceremony, and this is in Natchitoches, Louisiana, which is in the northern part of our state. We're in Baton Rouge, so it's about 3 hours away. So I've got my crew there anyway. We sit them down, and we have a host who does interviews with them. And so that interview series is called Behind the Glory. And, the segments that we produce are 13-minute segments, which we air on Thursday nights. So we get all of our production done. We sit down while we're there. No extra expenses incurred. While we're in that part of the state, we try and grab some other news stories for our weekly news magazine show. So you see we're getting a lot of bang for our buck here. We've got everybody there. We just kind of shoot like crazy for 3 days, wear everybody out. But when we come back, we have all of this content. And that turns into the series Behind the Glory, which airs in the fall and spring. It's 12 episodes, 13-minute episodes. And we are also utilizing the packages that were done on the inductees in the ceremony. So I say all this, the clip that I showed, you're going to see a little bit of the package. This is Simone Augustus. We just kicked off our beginning of our season I don't know if you guys know who she is. She's like the GOAT in basketball. She's awesome. So we're picking up her story here, and then you'll see a little bit of the interview.
As a high school standout at Baton Rouge's Capitol High, she was featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine and was highly recruited by every major college basketball program in the country.
I remember recruiting her when I was at Louisiana Tech. When you watched her play, I don't know that there was anything she couldn't do.
Simone's strength of character is what makes her a standout, a trait that was installed in her at a very young age.
You know, the very first time I ever saw Simone in person wasn't on a basketball court. It was Thanksgiving, and it was down at the Riverside Centralplex, and she was there serving food to the less fortunate. I just remember sitting there and looking at her. There's the #1 high school player in the United States of America, and she's spending Thanksgiving trying to make others feel better.
Simone, was the tip of the spear for your unparalleled career a conversation you had with your dad after losing an elementary school game?
It was. I had just started playing. I remember playing in the elementary school gym. I lost to actually my neighbor at the time. She had assembled her team. I had my team at school, and I lost. My dad came to pick me up, and I was on fire. I'm like, they cheated, And he was like, you lost, and that's the end of it. And so we get in the car, and it was a short car ride to our house. Mm-hmm. And he was like, you got to learn how to be a good loser before you could be a good winner, ever. And I was like, pouting. And he was like, well, what do you want to do with this? Do you want to be good or you want to be great? And I just sat in the car and kind of pouted. And by the time we got home, I got out the car and I was like, I want to be great. Slammed the door and stormed into the house. And then he came in and he was like, we got some work to do then.
So she is pretty great. Just by happenstance, she was inducted into the National Sports Hall of Fame just a couple of days before our program with her aired. But this was a great example of how this multi-platform project gave us access to somebody that otherwise would have been very difficult for us to get on her schedule and sit down with her. So there's just a lot of economies of scale that have come with the project.
That's right. You alluded to this earlier, but I loved how you approached the project in a multi-platform way, and you were capturing things for social and for YouTube, and that's such a smart way to do it before you start filming rather than sort of on the back end. So that's great. Andrew, if you want to please introduce yourself.
Hi there. I'm Andrew Nadkarni. I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm here this year with a film, a short doc that's going to be premiering tomorrow at 5. It's called After All This, and it's part of a series in the making, which is a co-production between American Masters and Firelight Media for PBS. So it will have sometime in 2025 a digital first with potentially a broadcast sort of release, but the films are individually premiering at festivals as they go. But I am also would like to talk about a film that I made that played here at Hot Springs last year, which was called Between Earth and Sky. That was a film I made independently with grant support from organizations like If Then, who's here at the forum, the Redford Center, and many other sort of support organizations along the way. But we made the film, we played at festivals, and we were acquired by POV Shorts, so we were able to have broadcast and as well as a streaming platform through POV.org and on the PBS app. And we had other ways, which maybe we'll get into later, about being able to get the film out there through a variety of fashions. But maybe I'll share. This is the trailer for the doc short Between Earth and Sky.
I remember when I was 8 or 9 years old, taking this very solemn oath. When I grow up, I want to do something that protects trees. Each time I go up there, it's this sense of newness. I think I always felt like I had to achieve something more. It's like riding this bright red arrow. So I went up this tree about 50 feet, supported by a rope no thicker than your pinky finger. Suddenly, I was not feeling the tension. And then I fell.
You know, when you watch a documentary of scientists in the field, and they always know exactly what they're doing next.
It's my pleasure to introduce the queen of the rainforest canopy.
It's like how often that just isn't true.
I knew who I was, but if I couldn't write another grant proposal, if I couldn't climb trees, who would I be? What would I be worth? There are these deep disturbances that happen to people throughout their lives. The trees were there as my witness.
It's a beautiful, beautiful trailer. And last but not least, Lisa, if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lisa Tawil. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications at ITVS. And I am curious what my wrestler name is, so I'm going to find more after this. I lead the audience development and distribution for our series Independent Lens, and very excited to be on this panel. Thank you, Hot Docs, for inviting us, and my fellow panelists, Adam, for leading the conversation. We've been working in the multi-platform space for a bit. You know, we've been funding long form and short form for a while, but we have started to really expand our multi-platform footprint with a few different types of content, creator collaborations, companion content, hosted social content, and even some journalism partnerships. So I'm going to show 3 clips that I'm sure I'll talk more about later. The first 2 are companion content to Space, The Longest Goodbye, which was a Sundance darling from about a year ago by Ido Mizrahi and aired on Independent Lens in May of this year. And then the last clip is kind of a yummy introduction to one of our digital series, and it came out after the film, and we were trying to kind of respark interest during a cultural moment. So 3 short vertical clips.
All right, got sent to this building. It says simulation on it. I hope I don't spin, because I don't like to be spun.
A few moments later.
Yeah! Ethan, this contraption, what am I looking at? What'd you just put me in?
So this is the MAT. It stands for the Multi-Axis Trainer. It is based off of the trainings that the early NASA Mercury astronauts did. Theirs had joysticks on it so that they would actually try and stop the spin. That's part of what they were practicing for, and to get used to being disorientated in a tumble spin. Neil Armstrong experienced a tumble spin in real life, not just here in simulation, during his Gemini 8 spaceflight. So Neil Armstrong was actually able to save the capsule, stop the tumble spin, and return back to Earth safely along with his co-pilot.
So not only is this an extreme physical test and training, but it's also extremely mental training, right?
Yes. There's a huge psychological aspect to it, and that's something that the early Mercury astronauts were heavily trained for.
Let's see, what did we have for breakfast 2 days ago?
So,
Yeah, I think we have
2 more.
Okay, you've seen those iconic images of astronauts playing with water and microgravity? Looks fun, until you remember that's going on inside the astronauts as well. In microgravity, about 2 liters of fluid moves from an astronaut's legs upward. It's called fluid shifting, but the super scientific term is puffy head, bird legs. Astronauts often describe feeling a bit like they got a head cold. They even feel congested, sometimes lose their sense of smell. But the physiological effects are more serious too. MRIs of astronaut brains showed more fluid underneath and around their brains. Moreover, the pockets inside their brains, called ventricles, had stretched and took years to return to normal. This is something space agencies have to take seriously, and they are. While the effects tapered off after 6 months and astronauts shown no reduced cognitive ability, it still raises questions about what might happen on trips that last much longer than your regular ISS stay of 6 months or a year. For a deeper look at the extremes of space exploration, watch Space, The Longest Goodbye. Link down in the description.
I just got done watching Spice Road over on YouTube, and it got me super interested in just how many different types of Indian food there are. Turns out most of the Indian food we here in the US comes from the northern part of India, and some from the southern peninsula. But India is huge. It has nearly 1.5 billion people, and there's something for every palate. Okay, say you want some spice. Try central India, where both the food and the climate are hot. Some of the spiciest food comes from the secluded Northeast, home of the ghost pepper. They use a lot of chilies, which is said to keep the body cool. And for those of you who like a little bit of sweet and savory, Eastern India is known to add a little bit more sweetness to their dishes. They're heavy on the rice and the fish, but they use fewer spices than other regions. Now, before I dig into the North and South, I'm gonna actually go get some food to eat.
Wow, let's play it.
Spice World, just a fantastic show. Don't watch it on an empty stomach. Also, this is a unique experience, sort of like scrolling on a TikTok feed on big screen. It's interesting. But there was a PBS annual meeting session talking about multi-platform projects, and the title was Everything Everywhere All at Once, which sort of speaks to the dizzying experience of sort of creating in this funny environment. But there's a lot of opportunities, but there's a lot of challenges. So if just each of you briefly, I would love to hear from you all. We're in this moment of incredible change for film and docs. What excites you about this current multi-platform landscape, and what are some of the challenges? Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll
go for it.
I think being a part of public media, there's such good brand recognition. There's such trust when trust is being shaken. And so it's such an opportunity for the brand to kind of expand into spaces that we know audiences exist. And so for us, YouTube has been incredibly helpful in identifying audiences that already have a behavior, that already have a way that they're consuming content. And for us, YouTube has been really great for growth. It also offers a depth of data knowledge that allows us to actually identify and target lookalike audiences. So it has expanded, our audience targeting as well as audience success. And so, tacking back to what you just saw with Space, The Longest Goodbye, this content was very successful. The companion content we created had 2.4 million views. In and of itself, that was great. But we also saw over 1 million views for the long form piece, which released on YouTube as well. And we know that those audiences tacked back because 72% of the audience for The Longest Goodbye was under 45, which is very different than what our broadcast audience looks like. So for us, that's the huge boon. The one caveat, the asterisk to it all, is that when you're playing on a private platform, you kind of have to have your go bag ready if the corporation that is running the site has a strategy that doesn't align with your values. And we take that pretty seriously at ITVS, wanting to make sure that access and the corporations that we partner with have that thought in mind. So we are working actively to expand digital audiences and grow them in a lot of different places, not relying too heavily on one or another, just in case a decision is made. Yeah, if I can piggyback off of what you were saying, the first part of what you were saying, the advantage to YouTube is its incredible accessibility. It's like it's the number one place people are going to watch TV. So people are already there. So it's really accessible. And not only that, but the short that I showed, the first, before it went viral, like the first 53% of the viewers were the normal Terra, that's the channel it publishes on, that the Terra viewers, people are watching weather, people want to check it out. But after it goes viral, suddenly that drops off and it's like 30% or whatever. And then it just is now a completely different audience. It's people from outside the United States. It's people who are much, much younger. It's people from India and the Philippines, oddly. And so it's like there's just, you make content thinking that you know who your audience is, and then one piece that you publish, your audience can change overnight. And I just think that that's really fascinating. I think it's a disadvantage and an advantage. I think it's both. So, yeah.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, I'll just, the possibilities are amazing. It's exciting and exhilarating to feel like you can get this larger audience that you don't know who they are, but it's also overwhelming. And I say that as somebody who was in the commercial world for many years, and broadcast was the holy grail. And I've also been an independent filmmaker, and It's a real mind shift, I think, thinking about the content in a different way, understanding the value of shorter form content and different content in this media landscape. And I just say that for anyone else in the room that gets a little overwhelmed by that and is trying to figure out how do you value it in the same way? How do you understand the potential of it? And that's just not always easy. And it's also changing. It feels like it changes every day. So it feels like a race to sort of keep up with it.
Yeah, and I think with my film, we were lucky enough to be partnering with a public media where we could retain ownership of the film, and the goal was aligned for the film to get out to people in sort of any way that we could. So there, rather than restricting what we could do with the film, it sort of opened these avenues. We were able to have the film streaming with PBS, but also put it on Vimeo Staff Pick, and also have some partner orgs that had their own sort of smaller or different streaming platforms, put those on, and it kind of opened our audience globally, and it opened up to different people that subscribe to different sort of things in a different way than if we had been distributed by something like a streamer or a different distributor. So I'm very grateful for public media kind of giving us that gift of putting the film out and allowing us to retain our own story. And I think, some of the challenges, there's so much out there, and I think it's hard to kind of break through unless you're really sort of clear on who your audience and community is, and you're really working to kind of find them and build that community.
Thanks, Andrew. So Andrew was talking a lot about partnerships, and we had that great panel earlier about partnerships, and I want to zoom in a little bit about that. How have you all used partners to help tell more impactful stories or amplify your films across platforms? If you could share just some specific examples building on sort of what Andrew just talked about.
Well, we produce Overview with a production company called Spotson. I don't know if you noticed, Mr. Johansson just showed up a couple times. But, when Rachel and I were starting season 2, Joe was our host for season 1. And we were thinking, if we bring Joe back for season 2 and his now production company back to help us produce the series, we have not only this beautiful marriage, this beautiful partnership that we can nurture, but it's like they're kind of YouTube gold. Like they know what works, they know what they're doing, and we are working on all these other fronts, right? We're doing documentaries, we're doing a lot of broadcasts, and so they are bringing something to the table, and we're bringing something to the table, and it's just a beautiful partnership. And now they're like invested editorially, production wise, right? Like, so I think it works. Collaboration, that's why we're all here, right? Is because we like to collaborate.
I love it when the digital first producers have the opportunity to do things with documentary textures or bigger projects like that. That's great. Any other?
Yeah, I'll talk about the project that I discussed last year, but it's such a great success story for us. Louisiana has a large French-speaking population that has been there for a long time. And several years ago, we partnered with a young media company called Tawil, Louisiana, and in conjunction with them have produced, again, these 13-minute segments that we put on broadcast and that also go on our YouTube channel. But that partnership has been so critical because of who they are. They're younger, they're all in their 20s. They are French speaking. They do all things French all the time in Louisiana. So they, hang out with the French consulate and, whatever they do. I don't know. It's like in New Orleans and the Cajun parts of Louisiana. But they have those relationships. They're specialists in that. And they have access to sort of stars within the French community that I don't have and no one on my team necessarily has. So as we've partnered, it's been great because we've been able to mentor them and give them some of the training that they needed and experience that we have to say, here's how you make this better and make this appropriate for broadcast. but then they have been able to really leverage those relationships on our behalf. And so it's really felt like a win on both sides. And they, we promote the content on our social media, obviously, but they have their whole social media system and promote things. And so it's always fun for us when we put something new to see, who have they tagged and how is it going viral, because their reach is further than our reach. So it's really, it's been very mutually beneficial.
Great. So I want to sort of zoom in. We've featured a lot of great companion content examples earlier, a lot of discussions around YouTube. Just can you tell me about how have you approached creating companion content for your projects? And what were some of the tactics that you used to help sort of make that companion content successful on the sort of different platforms you were on? Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll jump in. Please. It's interesting. We've employed a few different tactics, and I think there are two that are easier for filmmakers to kind of jump into. So I'm going to start with those two. The first is, looking at what other entertainment genres align with your content. And so this was kind of that third example of for Spice Road. We have seen a lot of success in the food vertical with our content, mainly because people understand culture through food. Their identity comes through food, and that overlaps really nicely with the documentary audience. And so we recently re-released Soul Food Junkies by Byron Hurt. It's a 2011 film, fantastic film. We released it on YouTube and also the PBS app. And we timed it with Labor Day, when everybody was going to be barbecuing. We released it about a week ahead, and, the numbers did okay. We were promoting it. And then Labor Day hit, and it went 10 times what it did the week before. It doubled our streaming numbers in September, so it was responsible for 50% of all the streams we got. And so there are a lot of ways that you can think about creating content, companion content, and re-releasing content that all kind of align. And similar how you saw Kyle talking about Indian food, doing that, he also did that with Soul Food Junkies. And so that companion content aligned with food, aligned with a re-release, and was very successful. And if I'm going to give one more quick example, is it okay? The other thing is there are experts in this space already that are talking to audiences that you want to talk to. And so for Space the Longest Goodbye, we looked at two audiences, a super science-heavy audience and a kind of the mental health aspect of isolation, knowing that we all just survived a pandemic together. So, what are the two audiences that we could align there? And then you really can't do this work without excellent partners across the board. So there's the creator partnership. Also, PBS is an amazing partner for exploration. Our funders who trust us to explore CPP forward. The partnerships on both sides to really explore with companion content's really critical. So I would say that's a good tip.
Yeah, for us, one of our goals was to kind of promote the film, get the film out there, but also get people to sort of connect with the themes of the film, including, the connection to nature and trees and how that can be healing, to mental health and physical health. And so in addition to, sort of clips from the film, we used outtakes of the film that included Nalini, who is my aunt, going into the rainforest and giving sort of tree facts or talking about sort of emotional connection she has to trees, stuff that didn't fit into the film, but sort of stood alone as something that, you could just kind of jump into. She calls them tree notes, where she sort of gives a sort of a factoid about trees that sort of makes you think. And we also had sort of multimedia as in non-video sort of components, where we had some folks had written poems in a workshop that we had done around the film, and we shared some of those poems, and we shared resources because there was some mental health and personal elements to the film. So it was sort of a variety of things, but outtakes and sort of those tree connection things were a main thing.
I love that. I mean, again, as filmmakers, we're always capturing way more than we can ever use. So it's so great we can have these platforms to share this material. Nicole, I would love, you are steeped in with sort of a lot of digital first content, and we're all thinking about YouTube a lot here. I would wonder if you can just give some of the specific tactics that you've seen, sort of that helps with overview, that maybe documentary filmmakers can use as they think about positioning their projects on YouTube to succeed.
Okay.
Really putting you on the spot.
That's okay. Well, so this particular clip I showed, the strategy for the vertical videos that go along with this series, it's one strategy. It's really, really simple, and it's for all of the videos that we're going to make for the whole strategy is just like zoo books when you were a kid. It was like, what is this a picture of? And then you would zoom out. You'd be like, it's a bird's feather. And it's like, that's it. We're going to find stuff on Google Earth from all over the world, and we're going to be like, what is that? And then we're going to zoom out, and we're going to tell you what it is. And it's a 1-minute story. And it was just a really simple way of capturing like the spirit of our series in like a very simplified 1-minute version of that. And I think it was really effective, and I think it ignites this like excitement because it's a little bit of a mystery, there's a little bit of suspense or whatever, but it resolves very quickly. And I think, I didn't mention this earlier, but when I was talking to Darren about the clip, one of the things that maybe it was so successful is because he's immediately like, check this out. And it's like, when you go out and you make your film, you're not going to immediately make a film where someone's like, check this out. And that's how your film starts. But I think for this type of platform, if it's going on Instagram or whatever, your companion content is going to be snappy. It's going to be, look at this. Right? We're going to dangle something right in front of you. Like, here's the carrot, and then you come with me for the next 60 seconds to explore this. And then you resolve it beautifully.
Love that. All packed into 1 minute. That's great. So I want to be sensitive to time and leave questions for Q&A, which will start in about 5 minutes. So think about your questions, folks. But I also want to talk about, in terms of multi-platforms, things like PBS Learning Media or complementary learning materials. That is also a really important platform as we're considering these things. Articles. Can some of you all talk about, some of that kind of companion content that can sort of make these more, suitable for classrooms and things like that? Or anybody wants to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in with that. We produced a couple years ago a series. It was a 4-hour extravaganza of Louisiana culture and history called Why Louisiana Ain't Mississippi or Anyplace Else. And this is not a slam on Mississippi to anybody from Mississippi in this room. But it was a great 4-hour project looking at the history, arts, and culture, and the things that Louisiana has sort of disproportionately contributed to culture given the size of the state. The series did incredibly well for us in the broadcast space and really has been a tremendous fundraising tool. But we have been working this past year on getting a lot of that content onto PBS Learning Media. And that's been really exciting because there's just great history that is part of it, great cultural moments about food, gumbo, very specific history to Louisiana, the Napoleonic Purchase. I mean, you name it, we kind of ran through everything in that series. So we're putting that on PBS Learning Media and making that available to the nation, which is an amazing opportunity. The second project that comes to mind is Ziggy's Arts Adventure, which is a digital-first arts educational series that we produce. And it is digital first. It's only distributed on YouTube, but we just received funding from the CPB. We are piloting this in South Carolina and in Memphis and working on ways to distribute that content through state systems, which is how we've done it in Louisiana. So we are getting it into the classrooms through the stations working with the existing state infrastructure that's there. And it's a pilot, so we're going to see how this goes. But the idea is to see, can we replicate this in other states? And so it's a more meaningful way. Instead of just putting the content out there and hoping people find it, we have all the learning materials, all of the structure that people need to put it in the classrooms. Teaching artists will be working with the content and really utilizing it to its full extent. So we're excited about that and excited to see what we learn from that experiment.
Yeah, POV supported and worked with us to create a discussion guide that we could provide to schools and community organizations. And whenever we got into a film festival, we would reach out to them and say, hey, we have this resource. We'd love to do educational screenings if you have connections to local groups or local schools. And many of them, provided those connections and even facilitated those for us. So we were able to do, screenings and workshops with that resource material, that discussion guide, some of which we were there for, some we zoomed in for. And also we, created this walk shop where we would screen the film, and then when we could go outside and sit and reflect and kind of discuss the film under the trees. And so it allowed us to have really lovely screenings with schools and libraries and even in a juvenile detention center as well.
Walk shop, I love that idea. That's so cool. All right, so I want to leave time for Q&A, so I'm just going to have one more question for the panel here before we open it up. What advice do you have for the filmmakers in this audience and sort of watching this later on as sort of creators and filmmakers entering this space today?
Just try stuff. Just don't be afraid to try stuff. I feel like YouTube can seem unforgiving, but it's actually incredibly iterative. It's like, go out there, make something, nobody watches it, who cares? Move on, make something else, someone will watch it. Eventually, people will watch the stuff that you're putting out.
Yeah, don't get hung up on gear, too. Everybody's got a 4K camera in their pocket.
Well, yeah, we're about to, I think, have a movie distributed, like a full-length feature blockbuster film that was shot on an iPhone.
So the next Danny Boy.
Yeah, so just do stuff and put it out there.
Just do stuff. I love that.
Do it, Nike.
I will throw in a little plug to say also think about the potential underwriting possibilities associated with these different types of content. And that's something that I'm wrapping my head around as we develop materials. But you have corporate sponsors and individuals who want to get their message across. And that is one of the biggest opportunities, I think, with multi-platform is being able to say, you've got this audience and this audience and this audience. And it's a way, it helps convince them to open their pocketbooks. So smart.
I would say like every film has a different path, and as much as you can look for examples in sort of the pathway that a filmmaker got to, make the film that they made, I think if you can, try to be in the process instead of thinking about sort of the result-oriented way of thinking, try to kind of let the process be the part of the film that you're experiencing.
Very good advice.
Yeah. +1 on everything everyone said on this panel, especially try stuff. Just do it. Also thinking about accessibility and Spanish language. These are things that are really easy to do in the digital space and are prioritized by algorithms and help expand you into new audiences. So consider those things when you make your stuff.
Very good point. And I'll add too, and you kind of alluded this to Linda, but as PBS is looking at submissions, as IL and other partners are looking at submissions from filmmakers, they're keeping an eye on like, what does the multi-platform sort of strategy look like for these projects? So as you sort of create your proposals, thinking about that from the jump can be very, very helpful. So with that, I do want to open it up. We've got about 5-6 minutes left for questions. So anybody has a question? We've got a number of hands back.
All right, coming to you.
The enthusiastic hands, right?
We did an overview episode on canopy soil. I'll send it to you.
Hey there.
It's really good.
That was a great last comment. I actually had a question about that. So I came from the TV world, now more in doc film world. If you have a project that has a lot of elements of multi-platform potential, how do you know who to pitch to in that to get that kind of going to where, what's the anchor part of it, but when it has so much possibilities for the multi-platform? So instead of including it not only in your pitch, but do you have any recommendations for like how to kind of get to you all to kind of emphasize that in addition to this, the anchor project part of it? Like,
I'm happy to answer for ITVS, which is, we just changed our submission to our open call. The form will look a little different, and open call is opening again soon. And we're prioritizing streaming and audience targeting alongside, what is the foundational piece that you're pitching. I would say be open to changing format or style and say that in your application. I see this as a feature film, but I actually think it could be a short series in digital or, so our form has actually changed so that you can pitch if you are open to format changes, because the story now can live in so many different places. And as soon as we see that, we think, can it be multi-platform? We already are pushing it on multiple platforms in our mind. So yeah, but I said put it out there.
The thoughts? I'll add that some of my favorite people within the public media system are the social media managers, and we all love filmmakers. So they, just tag folks on your social media platform of choice if you've got questions about an open call or just submitting things to a given station or partner. We are collaborative, and we will point you in the right direction, be it a station or sort of PBS national. In general, we rely on partners like Independent Lens, POV, and our stations to help work sort of very closely with stations. So I think those are sort of your best first bets rather than going to sort of PBS national.
And I will just add that every station is different, so there's not a one-size-fits-all answer, unfortunately. You have to look at the station that you're approaching, if it's your local station or if there's another state that for some reason you're reaching out to them because of the nature of the project. You just email people. I mean, email your content people, executive producer, chief content officer, whoever that you can get in front of and start that conversation with them that way.
Other questions?
I'm going to make a statement about social media and feel free to refute it. But it seems like the things that do really well on social media target the lizard brain. It's shocking, it's fear, someone's in danger. How do you balance your brand and how much you are willing to stray from your brand values with what's going to do well with the algorithm?
I will answer this. I would argue that it's not always fear or disgust. It's a question that needs an answer. It's called the curiosity gap. I have an interesting thing that you want to know the answer to, and then I'm going to tell you the answer. If you stick around for the next 30 seconds to 60 seconds, you'll probably get the answer to this. So it's posing a question that you know is going to hook somebody in. And I think go ahead.
No, go ahead. You finish.
There's just effective ways that I think PBS has found to do that really effectively, where we're not clickbaity. In fact, we've had things not get greenlit because they're too clickbaity, where we're like, oh, we have an idea. And it's like, that's not happening.
Yeah, somebody who used to work with PBS Digital Studios and continues to sort of greenlight a lot of digital series. We're not asking our filmmakers to sort of become Mr. Beast. What we're trying to do is thread that needle where you use some of the tactics that we just know work on these platforms because there's something really special. You all are telling stories that nobody else is covering. So if we can combine that with some of those best practices for these digital platforms and amplify those amazing stories and your films, I think that is worth trying. But yeah, we don't want to sort of take filmmakers too far out of their comfort zone, and we're still PBS, and we're always going to be very, very mindful about how we sort of, for our brand and how we sort of act on social. But right, other questions? Back there? Any microphones?
Sorry, hand.
Worries.
Sorry, just producing over here. This is what producing's all about. One moment. Here.
Worries. I think in the back there. Yep. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's two parts for anyone that wants to answer, but at what stage do you guys roll out these short form contents and distribution, and where do you find success converting people to actually watch, the longer form film?
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to answer. So it is very true that launching it when let's call it the anchor content is available. So we actually do our marketing, most of it after premiere, which is very different than how we've all been trained to lead up to premiere. We do put out a few teaser pieces, but for the most part, marketing is now occurring after. And then the second thing is, can you convert? We see very little audiences jump from Instagram to YouTube or from YouTube to what have you. But like I said, we did see some success when we went from YouTube horizontal to YouTube horizontal. YouTube Shorts, which is the vertical content, did not translate into the long piece. And I would say that, that quickly became not our goal. We really were trying to build a noise vacuum, a hunger for this type of content, moreover than trying to, get from one to the other. So we really focused on the top of the marketing funnel, if you will. and saw success as time went on.
I'll just say, when we have really intentional call to actions from the hosts or the sort of featured subjects of a film, making those asks, hey, watch the project on the PBS app, watch it on YouTube. That means a lot more than a more boilerplate link in the description or something like that. Viewers are, when you have that intentional ask, they will, some of them will follow you. I think we're just out of time. We are out of time. We could go on for a long time, but thank you so much to my panel and this panel.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thanks to this great group of folks.